Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving headfirst into something that, well, for many of us, it sparks a familiar kind of unease. That nagging human suspicion about being tricked or scammed or maybe just completely blindsided. The sources we pulled together for this deep dive, they offer a truly rich exploration of these common, yet often, perplexing experiences that can leave us feeling pretty vulnerable.
That's right. And our mission today really is to pull apart these core concepts. We want to reveal how deeply they connect with fundamental human elements like trust, our innate fears, and that need for control we all seem to have. We're going to try and understand why these feelings hit us so powerfully.
So the big question we're wrestling with is, are these experiences truly similar, or are they actually profoundly different? And maybe even more importantly, why do we absolutely hate feeling this way? Let's try and unravel it. Okay, so to really get our bearings, let's nail down what each of these terms actually means. First up, being tricked. Our sources explain this as, well, someone using deception to make us believe something untrue, often to manipulate our behavior. It's kind of illusion-based, Think of, like, the magician making a coin vanish right before your eyes.
Right.
Or maybe a more subtle manipulation playing out in a relationship. It's about creating a reality designed to mislead. Then we have being scammed. Now, this is a specific, often predatory form of trickery. Here, the deception's main goal is almost always financial or material gain. There's this inherent exploitation. And the victim typically suffers a tangible loss, like picture that convincing phishing email trying to steal your bank details.
Yeah, those are nasty.
Or, falling prey to a big Ponzi scheme. It's basically trickery with a direct material cost.
Definitely.
And finally, being blindsided. This one isn't always about deliberate deception, but it's equally jarring, right? It's about being caught totally off guard by something unexpected, usually negative, with like zero chance to prepare. It's fundamentally about surprise. Shock.
Exactly.
Imagine like the sudden news of a job loss or a betrayal from a friend you thought was loyal or a completely out of the blue breakup. No warning, just boom.
Yeah. And what's really striking is how these quite distinct experiences, they actually converge on a shared and pretty profound impact.
Yeah.
Our sources really highlight this. Each one, in its own way, fundamentally violates trust because the reality that unfolds is just so starkly different from what we believed.
Right.
They also tend to trigger this deep shame. It pushes us to often blame ourselves, How could I fall for that? Or why didn't I see it coming? And crucially, they shatter our sense of control. They're this stark reminder that we're not always in command of our circumstances. And perhaps most viscerally, they activate fear, the sort of primal fear of vulnerability, of betrayal, and the dread of it happening again.
So when you lay it out like that,
Yeah.
what really jumps out to you about those initial distinctions, especially thinking about that shared emotional fallout?
Well, if we expand on that shared impact, these experiences, they cut really deep into our core psychological needs. Take our fundamental need for control. These moments completely shatter that illusion, don't they? They make us painfully aware that others can influence us or hurt us without our consent. It leaves you feeling really exposed.
Yeah, powerless almost.
Exactly. Then there's our desire for predictability. We kind of build these mental frameworks for how the world should operate. But trickery just ricks up those unwritten rules. It can lead to this profound disorientation, like the ground shifts beneath your feet.
Okay.
And it's a direct hit on our self-image, our sense of competence. Being fooled suggests we were naive or gullible or just plain unaware, which is a significant blow to the ego.
Right. Nobody likes feeling foolish.
No. And this also erodes our trust in others. It can lead to this generalized suspicion about the world, Finally, there's that fear of recurrence. We desperately want to learn from these incidents, hoping to sort of inoculate ourselves, but this can, unfortunately, lead to a kind of hypervigilance that sometimes even ticks over into paranoia.
So, okay, if these are the deep psychological roots, what does this all mean for how these feelings actively, shape us? Well, these experiences, they seem to hardwire us for skepticism, which is, a vital survival tool, but one that can quickly sour into this corrosive cynicism if it's left unchecked.
That's a good point.
We learn to truly value authenticity because we grasp just how costly lies can be, emotionally, financially. We start creating these little rituals of verification, right? Whether it's diligently checking reviews before a purchase or seeking second opinions on really crucial decisions.
Double-checking everything.
And interestingly, we often bond over shared suspicion, which maybe can even give rise to phenomena like conspiracy theories sometimes.
Could be that shared sense of they're out to get us.
Yeah. And ultimately, we evolve culturally. I mean, much of our morality, our etiquette, even our legal systems exist specifically to prevent or punish deception.
Yeah, there's a powerful summary from one of the sources that truly captures this. It says, humans dislike being tricked, scammed, or blindsided, not just because of the immediate losses, but because of what those moments represent. They signify a rupture in the very story we tell ourselves about how safe we are, how smart we are, how in control we are.
Wow.
In those raw moments, the world reveals itself as chaotic, maybe even cruel. And we are starkly reminded that trust isn't just precious, it's incredibly fragile.
And here's where it gets really, really thought-provoking for me. This idea that trickery often acts as a mirror, that it reflects more about us, the fool, than it does about the actual trickster.
Oh, absolutely. This mirror concept is crucial. When we find ourselves tricked, it often highlights our own biases. That powerful feeling of, well, I wanted to believe it. It exposes our blind spots, maybe our optimism, maybe just an excess of trust in that situation. And it definitely taps into our desires, whether it's hope for a better future, a craving for certainty, or, let's be honest, sometimes simple greed. This is why, as the sources emphasize, scams often target very specific emotional states. Loneliness, a sense of urgency, that hunger for quick gains, or deep-seated insecurities. We don't fall for lies because they sound inherently false. Often we fall for them because they echo something we already desperately want to be true.
And once we've been fooled, there's that intense mental tug of war, right? That cognitive dissonance where your internal voice is screaming, I'm not the kind of person who gets fooled. But the reality is, you were. And that dissonance, it can absolutely lead to anger or even this kind of internal retaliation against the sheer discomfort of that realization.
Yeah, that inner conflict often leads to what the sources call the shame loop. It's really damaging. Victims of scams or betrayal frequently hide their experiences because they feel intense embarrassment. But this silence, unfortunately, it creates isolation, which only compounds the trickster's power in a way. Shame thrives in private. Narratives of resilience, on the other hand, they require visibility and compassion to break free from that cycle.
Okay, let's pivot now to something that maybe widens our lens a bit.
Yeah.
The cultural and symbolic dimensions of trickery, particularly this concept of the trickster as a kind of social catalyst. Our sources point out that tricksters often expose a fundamental weakness in a system.
Yeah, like finding the cracks.
Exactly. Be it legal loopholes, rigid hierarchies, or just plain moral hypocrisy. They're not always villains, are they? Sometimes they can be powerful agents of evolution. Think about like historical figures like court jesters or modern-day whistleblowers or even certain types of hackers. Sometimes trickery actually clears out the old rot and makes space for real reinvention.
It's also worth acknowledging, I think, that deception isn't always malicious. Often it's just a tool of survival. You see it in nature all the time and throughout human history. Things like camouflage, bluffing, even forming fake alliances to get by. Sometimes it's simply adaptive.
Right.
Children, for example, they learn to lie not usually from a place of innate evil, but more from observing social patterns and recognizing how it, well, functions in their environment.
This brings up a really crucial and maybe uncomfortable question.
Yeah.
Can deception ever be ethical? Our sources bring up instances like white lies. Those small deceptions meant to protect someone's feelings. We all tell them, right?
Very much, yeah.
Or consider the placebo effect. I mean, it's a lie, technically, an inert substance, but it can produce real healing. Is there a fundamental difference between just, like, omitting information versus actively fabricating it?
That's a tricky line.
And what about stories and myths? Are they forms of intentional trickery that serve some kind of emotional or cultural truth, even if they aren't factually accurate?
This is where I think consent emerges as the really key ethical divider. The difference between, say, a magic show and outright fraud, or seduction versus manipulation, or even art versus propaganda. It often boils down to consent and awareness on the part of the audience, the person being tricked. The key question is, was the illusion crafted with the intention to delight and engage, or was it designed to exploit and extract something?
That's a powerful distinction, consent.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack that often blurry boundary between cleverness and cheating, how context and consequences really define where that line falls.
Right. The sources outline 3 core tensions that really separate them. First, there's intent. Cleverness tends to break norms with the aim to improve or evolve or maybe just outmaneuver within the spirit of the system. Cheating, conversely, breaks rules specifically to exploit, deceive, or gain an unfair advantage. The intent is different.
Got it. Spirit versus letter of the law, almost.
Kind of. Second is transparency. Cleverness is often visible, or at least justifiable after the fact. Think of a really ingenious legal argument that people admire once it's revealed. Cheating, on the other hand, is almost always hidden. It relies entirely on deception for its effectiveness. If it's exposed, it fails.
Makes sense.
And finally, impact. Cleverness can genuinely uplift others or disrupt systems in a way that sparks growth. Think positive disruption. While cheating consistently undermines trust, equity, or meritocracy within that system, it damages the system.
That's a really sharp framework. And to elaborate on that, maybe think about the system's integrity itself. Cleverness works around the system, maybe, without actually undermining its legitimacy. Like that lawyer finding a creative interpretation that exposes an ambiguity.
Right, pushing the boundaries.
Whereas cheating depends entirely on the system not noticing the breach. It loses all its power if exposed, like, say, a lawyer falsifying evidence to win a case. That destroys trust in the whole system. Then there's the question of who benefits. Cleverness can often benefit many, even if it started with a personal move. Like, Rosa Parks breaking segregation laws was technically illegal, but morally revolutionary, right? It benefited countless others.
A classic example.
Cheating, though, usually benefits the individual at the direct cost of others. Like steroid use in sports damages the whole idea of fair play. Ultimately, yeah, cleverness evolves the game. Cheating corrupts it.
And this brings up a critical point. Why fairness isn't just, a nice virtue to have. It's truly the essential infrastructure for society. Fairness builds trust in others. It enables cooperation among strangers. It maintains social order. Without it, a civilization really erodes from within. Trickery, especially if it goes unpunished or, worse, gets glorified, becomes like a rot in the system. It undermines everything.
That's precisely why trickery often feels so intense, almost primally evil, doesn't it? It exploits these loopholes in trust or love or law, revealing a flaw either in the system itself or maybe in ourselves for believing in it. It's not just the act. It's the profound violation of that implicit contract we all kind of share.
Yeah, the social contract.
That contract says, essentially, if we're all playing the same game and you win by cheating, the whole game collapses.
Yeah.
That's why trickery evokes such visceral anger, I think. It undoes that comforting illusion that effort or goodness or just pure intention are actually enough to succeed.
Well said.
So here's a core insight that really highlights the paradox we're exploring. The very same mechanism of being tricked can feel either violating and painful or completely delightful. And it depends entirely on the context, the consent involved, and ultimately the consequence.
It's fascinating to break that down. Let's consider when being tricked hurts, especially when there are real-life consequences. Take financial scams. They lead to these crushing feelings of betrayal, shame, rage, helplessness. Just awful. Why such intensity? Because money represents survival, autonomy, the effort of our labor, right?
Yeah.
Losing it through trickery feels like theft plus profound humiliation.
Yeah, it's deeply personal.
Then there's trickery involving health or emotional vulnerability, like fake medical treatments or dishonest partners. This evokes deep feelings of violation, fear, grief. Being tricked here directly threatens your identity, your safety, your future well-being. It's terrifying.
Absolutely.
Even in sports and games, things we might think are less serious, like doping or rigged matches. The feelings are strong. Disillusionment, injustice, frustration. Sports are symbolic, right? We invest because the rules feel sacred, representing effort, merit, order. Cheating distorts that symbolic reward, making the whole game feel kind of pointless.
Right. But now let's contrast that with when being tricked is actually enjoyable, usually through performance and play. Think about magic shows. We feel awe, delight, this sense of permitted wonder. The trick here is consensual deception.
We opt in.
Exactly. We enter the space knowing we'll be fooled, and we actively enjoy the illusion because it celebrates mystery and human mastery. It's similar with movies and special effects. We lean into the immersion. We feel gratitude for the experience. We want to be tricked.
We suspend disbelief.
We willingly suspend disbelief for the sake of an emotional truth, not necessarily factual accuracy. And finally, games of bluff or role play like poker or Dungeons and Dragons. These generate excitement, sometimes even respect for a good bluff. Deception is part of the skill set here, so being fooled is still within the agreed-upon rules of the game. It's fair, in a way.
So, to crystallize the key differences, in painful trickery, there's zero consent from the victim.
Right.
The consequences are real and negative. It's a violation of established rules. It betrays trust, and it elicits those raw emotions.
Yeah.
Shame, anger, grief. In stark contrast, enjoyable trickery involves consent. The consequences are temporary or symbolic. It's an agreed-upon performance. It plays with trust rather than breaking it. And it brings wonder, fun, curiosity, totally different emotional landscape.
And this brings us to the crucial role of meaning and identity in all this. The deeper the stakes, whether it's our money, our relationships, our health, our sense of fairness, or the value we place on our own effort, the more a trick feels like a really personal violation. It's not just about what we lost. It's about what that loss says about us, that insidious voice whispering, I was gullible, or I wasn't good enough, or my story doesn't have justice.
Yeah, that narrative hit is huge. Conversely, when trickery leaves us whole, or even inspired, and we've consented to play along, we actually crave the illusion. Magic and movies let us enjoy being fooled because the lie is in service of something beautiful, an experience of wonder, not something predatory.
And this touches on a really profound anxiety many of us might be feeling right now in our modern world. When does cleverness become outright deception? When does enhancement become replacement? And what does it even mean to be good at something anymore in this age of AI and, well, pervasive illusion?
We are definitely navigating a new landscape of, let's call it modern trickery. It's across countless mediums, and the emotional responses are incredibly varied. Visually, you have AI-generated faces, deepfakes, hyper-realistic CGI. It can evoke confusion, awe, but also deep suspicion.
Right. Is it real?
Exactly. What was once clearly fiction or fantasy is now often indistinguishable from real creation, and that blurring in itself is the trick. Auditory examples, AI-generated voices, music mimicking real artists. That can spark enjoyment, but also maybe a sense of betrayal, like, is this authentic?
Yeah.
In language, you have auto-generated emails, essays, scripts, offers incredible efficiency, sure, but can also feel profoundly dehumanizing sometimes. And in performance, VTubers, virtual influencers, AI actors, they elicit fascination, but often this underlying unease, too.
So why do some people genuinely enjoy these new forms of trickery, while others really, really resent them? It seems like those who enjoy them often see technology as just a powerful tool or maybe a new kind of collaborator. They tend to prioritize the final outcome, the aesthetics or productivity, and they genuinely enjoy mystery, illusion, novelty. They essentially consent to the experience, knowing the context.
They're in on the magic trick, so to speak.
Kind of. On the other hand, those who resent it often see it as a replacement or a fundamental cheat. They prioritize the process, the human effort, the authenticity. They deeply value truth, intention, direct human skill. And they often feel deceived or disrespected by the artifice. So the real emotional split isn't simply about AI versus human, is it? It's more about whether the viewer or consumer or participant feels respected or manipulated.
That's a great way to put it. Which leads us to that critical question. When is the line crossed? When does it feel wrong? Our sources outline several violation factors. First, a lack of disclosure. You don't know it's AI or fake, and that crick isn't part of an agreed-upon performance or context.
So hidden manipulation.
Pretty much. Then there are real-world stakes. The illusion costs you actual money or trust or a real-life opportunity. That changes everything. Monetized exploitation is another big one, where the trick profits by erasing human creators or effectively stealing their identity or work.
That feels deeply unfair.
It does. A misleading intent where the goal isn't to entertain or enhance, but specifically to manipulate or deceive for some ulterior motive. And finally, impersonation, where someone is copied without their permission. That feels like theft, not homage.
Okay, this brings us to a fantastic metaphor I saw in the sources to help clarify this distinction. Magicians versus acrobats. Magicians are masters of perception, psychology, timing, narrative. Their skill lies in creating mystery, making us believe the impossible.
Right, illusion is the craft.
Acrobats, on the other hand, are masters of precision, control, raw strength. They defy physics through sheer physical realism. Their skill is tangible, visible. Both require credible discipline, craft, skill, absolutely. But one uses illusion as the skill, while the other relies on demonstrable physical reality. To call one lesser is to fundamentally misunderstand the purpose of their performance. We don't just admire what's physically hard to do. We admire what makes us feel something remarkable, whether that's awe, wonder, or just pure excitement.
That's a really useful analogy. And if we apply this thinking to AI in the workplace and art, it helps clarify things. Like, is an employee using AI to draft emails less skilled? Well, if the core job is simply effective communication, maybe not so much anymore. If outcomes are the ultimate goal, then it might not matter how those emails were generated. Skill now undeniably includes knowing how to leverage these powerful tools effectively.
So the definition of skill is shifting.
It absolutely is. Or consider a musician using AI to create complex orchestral songs. Are they less talented than someone who plays every single note on the piano? It's just a different category of talent, isn't it? It's like comparing a painter who meticulously mixes pigments by hand to a digital artist using software, or even an art director who guides a whole team. They are all artists, arguably, but they use different mediums of expression, different levels of abstraction, different methods of execution to realize their vision.
Ultimately, as our sources really drive home, we're not just debating skill here, are we? We're debating meaning, the profound anxiety we feel around AI and these new forms of trickery and automation. It isn't really just about the technical capabilities. It's about these fundamental human questions. What counts as real anymore? Who truly deserves credit for creation? What makes something authentically human? And maybe most importantly, what values do we want our creative work, our society, to express? We're in this profound transition period where sheer effort is no longer the sole measure of excellence, perhaps. And factual truth isn't necessarily the only measure of a powerful performance. And this creates a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of discomfort for people.
It really does.
But, and here's where it gets maybe exciting, it also creates freedom. The freedom to potentially redefine talent, to reframe authorship, to reshape art as more of a conversation maybe, not just a static product.
That's the potential upside, for sure.
And that, my friends, brings us right back full circle to the paradox of trickery.
Indeed. And the takeaway seems to be that trickery is not inherently good or bad. It really is a mirror reflecting our vulnerabilities, our desires. It's a tool that can be wielded for good or ill, and sometimes, yeah, it's a very real threat. It can enchant or exploit, liberate or deceive, depending not just on what was done, but fundamentally on how, why, and to whom.
Yeah. And we are tricked most easily, it seems, when we're hopeful or hurried or, ironically, when we're at our most trusting. And we are hurt most deeply when that deception violates our consent, costs us something real and tangible, or just shatters a personal story we've held dear about ourselves or the world.
Yet, here's maybe a final thought to leave you with. We don't actually seek to live in a world with no illusions. We crave the magic, the art, the stories. That's part of being human. We only seek to live in a world where we can tell the difference, where cleverness doesn't completely erase ethics, and where being fooled can become a choice, a consensual part of the human experience, not a punishment inflicted upon us. To be human is to constantly navigate that balance. Belief with skepticism, trust with caution, wonder with wisdom, to stay open without being naive, and alert without growing cynical.